Days turned into weeks, and David and Ellis settled into a routine. David taught Ellis about human culture, sharing stories and songs from Earth, while Ellis, in turn, shared fragments of his alien heritage. The child's abilities continued to amaze David: telekinesis, rapid healing, and an innate understanding of technologies far beyond human comprehension. Dr. David Carter's breath fogged up the inside of his helmet as he navigated through the wreckage. The aftermath of the interstellar battle lay silent and eerie around him, illuminated only by the flickering lights of damaged spacecraft. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt metal and the distant hum of failing energy cells. David's heart pounded as he carefully stepped over twisted beams and shattered panels. "Hello?" he called out, his voice crackling through the comms. "Is anyone alive out here?" A faint, trembling cry reached his ears, almost drowned out by the ambient noise. David's pulse quickened. He moved towards the sound, pushing aside debris until he found the source. There, amidst the ruins, was a small, alien child. Wide, terrified eyes stared up at him from a face streaked with dirt and tears. "It's okay," David said softly, kneeling down. "I'm here to help." The child, clutching a piece of wreckage, whimpered but didn't pull away. David carefully extended a hand, his heart aching at the sight of such innocence amidst devastation. The child's grip on the debris loosened, and David scooped him up, holding him close. "What's your name?" David asked gently. The child looked up at him, eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "Ellis," he whispered. David's mind raced. He knew the dangers of taking in an alien child, especially one with no known origins. The interstellar government and corporate conglomerates were ruthless in their pursuit of anything that could be used for research or exploitation. "Don't worry, Ellis," David said, determination hardening his voice. "I'll keep you safe." Back in his modest home, a hidden sanctuary far from prying eyes, David tended to Ellis's wounds. The child's unique physiology was unlike anything David had encountered, a mix of bioluminescent skin and rapidly healing tissues. As he worked, David couldn't help but marvel at the miracle before him. "You're extraordinary, you know that?" David said, smiling as Ellis's wounds began to close almost instantaneously. Ellis looked at him with those wide eyes, the fear slowly giving way to curiosity. "Why are you helping me?" David paused, the memory of his own family's loss flashing through his mind. "Because everyone deserves a chance," he said finally. "And I couldn't save my family, but maybe I can save you." But their tranquility was short-lived. One evening, as David and Ellis sat together, the distant roar of engines shattered the calm. Corporate patrol ships, their sleek, menacing forms cutting through the sky, were approaching. David's heart sank. "We need to move, now," he said urgently. Gathering their essentials, David and Ellis fled through the back alleys and hidden pathways of their settlement. The air was tense with the sound of distant engines and the flickering shadows of searchlights. As they ran, David's mind raced with plans and contingencies. They needed to get off the planet, find refuge somewhere far from the reach of corporate interests. He could feel the weight of his responsibility pressing down on him, but the sight of Ellis, determined and unafraid, spurred him onward. They reached an old, concealed spacecraft David had kept hidden for emergencies. It was outdated, but still functional. As they prepared for takeoff, David glanced at Ellis, who was watching him with a mixture of trust and apprehension. "This will be rough, but we'll be safe," David promised, starting the engines. The spacecraft rumbled to life, lifting off the ground and speeding away from their pursuers. As they broke through the atmosphere, the vastness of space opened up before them, a dark, infinite expanse filled with stars and endless possibilities. David set a course for a distant, uncharted sector. He knew their journey would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but as he looked at Ellis, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had each other, and that was enough to face whatever lay ahead. "Hold on, Ellis," David said, his voice steady. "We're in this together." Ellis nodded, his eyes shining with a mixture of fear and hope. David smiled, feeling a spark of hope ignite within him as well. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to face it head on, determined to protect the child who had become the center of his world. David and Ellis hurtled through space, the spacecraft trembling with the strain of escape velocity. The star-speckled void outside the window was a stark contrast to the turmoil within David's mind. He stole a glance at Ellis, who sat quietly, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The silence was broken by the ship's navigation system. "Entering coordinates for the rebel enclave," it announced in a monotone voice. David turned to Ellis. "We're heading to a place where the corporate patrols won't find us. It's not safe, but it's safer than where we were." Ellis nodded, his trust in David unwavering. "I understand. I'll be brave." David smiled, though worry gnawed at him. He knew their journey would be perilous. He engaged the autopilot and leaned back, the hum of the engines a constant reminder of their fragile sanctuary. Hours later, as they neared the enclave, David's heart pounded. The enclave was hidden on a derelict space station, a relic from a bygone era. It floated in the shadow of a dying star, its exterior scarred and battered. David guided the ship into a docking bay, the airlock hissing as it sealed. "Stay close," David instructed Ellis as they disembarked. The station's corridors were dimly lit, filled with the scent of oil and metal. The distant murmur of voices and the clanking of machinery echoed around them. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, rugged woman with piercing eyes and a commanding presence. "Dr. Carter, I presume," she said, her voice resonating with authority. David nodded. "And you must be Lieutenant Zara. I've heard about your resistance efforts." She eyed Ellis curiously. "We don't often get children here. Especially not ones like him." David placed a protective hand on Ellis's shoulder. "He's special. And we need your help." Zara's expression softened. "Follow me. We'll talk somewhere more secure." As they walked, Zara led them through a labyrinth of corridors, each turn revealing a snapshot of life in the enclave, families huddled together, mechanics working on salvaged ships, and sentinels on watch, ready for any threat. David's resolve hardened. This was their best chance at survival. In a small, secure room, Zara listened intently as David recounted their journey and the dangers they faced. Ellis sat quietly, absorbing every word. "We've been on the run ever since I found him," David concluded. "The corporations won't stop until they have him." Zara leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "We can offer you sanctuary, but it comes with risks. This place isn't invincible. We're constantly under threat." David nodded. "I understand. But it's a risk we're willing to take." Zara studied them both, then sighed. "Very well. You can stay. But you'll need to contribute." "We all do." Ellis perked up, his eyes shining with determination. "I can help. I'm strong." David's heart swelled with pride. He's right. Ellis has abilities that could be invaluable. Zara's gaze shifted to Ellis. "Then we'll find a place for you both. Welcome to the Enclave." The following days were a blur of activity. David found himself assisting in the medical bay, his expertise invaluable to the Enclave's limited resources. Ellis quickly integrated, his unique skills proving indispensable in various tasks. His telekinetic abilities amazed everyone, and his rapid healing made him a beacon of hope. One evening, as David and Ellis settled into their modest quarters, Ellis broke the silence. "Do you think we'll be safe here?" David hesitated, then spoke honestly. "For now, yes. But we must always be ready. The corporations are relentless." Ellis nodded, his young face etched with resolve. "I'll do my best to help." David ruffled Ellis's hair, a rare moment of tenderness. "I know you will. You're stronger than you realize." Their respite was short-lived. Late one night, alarms blared throughout the station. David and Ellis jolted awake, the sound of hurried footsteps and urgent voices filling the air. Zara's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, prepare for an imminent attack. Corporate forces have located us." David's blood ran cold. "Ellis, stay close. We need to move." The station shook as explosions rocked its foundations. David and Ellis raced through the corridors, joining the fray of resistance fighters readying their defenses. The air was thick with tension, the scent of smoke and fear palpable. As they reached the command center, Zara met them, her expression grim. "They're coming in force. We need everyone we've got." David nodded, adrenaline surging. "Tell us what to do." Zara's gaze lingered on Ellis. "We need his abilities now more than ever. Can you do it, kid?" Ellis stood tall, a fierce determination in his eyes. "I'll try my best." The stage was set for a desperate battle. David felt a swell of pride and fear as they prepared to defend their new home. The future was uncertain, but together, they would face whatever came their way. The sound of alarms blaring reverberated through the station's corridors, mixing with the distant echo of explosions. David's heart pounded as he led Ellis through the chaos toward the command center. His mind raced, planning their next moves. "We need to stay focused, Ellis," David said, glancing at his adopted son. "Stick close to me." Ellis nodded, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. "I'm ready, Dad." The term of endearment struck a chord in David, steeling his resolve. They reached the command center, where Zara was orchestrating the defense with the precision of a seasoned leader. "Dr. Carter, Ellis," Zara called out, waving them over to a holographic display showing the station's exterior. "The corporate forces have deployed breach pods. They'll be inside within minutes." David studied the display, his scientific mind quickly analyzing the situation. "We need to disable their entry points. Ellis's telekinesis can help. We can use the narrow corridors to our advantage." Zara nodded. "Agreed. Ellis, you'll work with David to block the main access corridors. We can't let them overwhelm us." Ellis swallowed hard but nodded, his eyes reflecting a fierce determination. "I can do it." David and Ellis hurried to the narrowest corridor near the docking bay, the sounds of distant gunfire and shouting growing louder. The air was thick with the scent of burning electronics and the metallic tang of fear. "Ellis, focus on the debris," David instructed. "Use your abilities to create barriers." Ellis closed his eyes, his brow furrowing in concentration. Slowly, pieces of debris began to lift off the ground, forming a makeshift barricade. David watched in awe, the sight both miraculous and heart-wrenching. This child, thrust into danger, was their best hope. "Good job, Ellis," David said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Keep it up." As they worked, the corporate forces broke through the outer defenses. The station shook with the impact of their weapons. David and Ellis could hear the approaching footsteps, the ominous clank of armored boots echoing down the corridors. Zara's voice crackled over the comms. "They're breaching the secondary hull. All units, prepare to engage." David's heart raced. He knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but surrender was not an option. The thought of Ellis falling into corporate hands was unbearable. "Dad, they're coming!" Ellis shouted, his voice tinged with panic. David turned to see the first wave of corporate soldiers emerging from the smoke. He grabbed a blaster from a fallen rebel and fired, the recoil jarring his arm. "Ellis, reinforce the barricade!" Ellis nodded, pushing his abilities to their limit. The debris moved faster, forming a solid wall that slowed the enemy's advance. But the soldiers were relentless, using energy cutters to slice through the barriers. David's mind raced. "We need to create a bottleneck. If we can funnel them into a single point, we stand a chance." Ellis nodded, sweat dripping from his forehead. "I'll try." As the corporate soldiers closed in, David and Ellis retreated to a narrower section of the corridor. Ellis focused his powers, pulling more debris to block off side passages. The enemy, forced into the bottleneck, became easier targets for the rebels' concentrated fire. The station continued to tremble with the intensity of the battle. David's ears rang with the sound of blaster fire and explosions. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal. "Hold the line!" Zara's voice rang out over the comms. "We're pushing them back." David fired relentlessly, each shot an act of desperation. He glanced at Ellis, who was visibly exhausted but unwavering. "You're doing great, Ellis. Just a bit longer." Ellis nodded, his face pale but determined. "I won't let them win." Despite their efforts, the corporate forces continued to press forward. David's blaster ran out of charge, and he discarded it, drawing a small energy blade instead. He stood ready, knowing this might be their last stand. Suddenly, a series of explosions rocked the station, and the corporate soldiers hesitated. David seized the moment, rallying the remaining rebels for a counterattack. "Now! Push them back!" With renewed vigor, the rebels surged forward, overwhelming the disoriented corporate forces. David fought with a ferocity born of desperation, his only thought to protect Ellis. In the chaos, Ellis used his telekinesis to hurl debris at the retreating soldiers, driving them back. The tide was turning, but the cost was high. The station was in ruins, and many rebels lay wounded or dead. As the last of the corporate soldiers retreated, a tense silence fell over the station. David dropped to his knees, exhausted. Ellis rushed to his side, his eyes wide with concern. "Dad, are you okay?" Ellis asked, his voice trembling. David managed a weary smile. "I'm fine, thanks to you. You were amazing." Zara approached, her expression grim but respectful. "We did it. For now. But they'll be back." David nodded, knowing the fight was far from over. "We need to prepare. This is just the beginning." Ellis looked up at David, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "We'll be ready. Together." David hugged Ellis tightly, the bond between them stronger than ever. They had survived this battle, but the war was far from over. And as long as they had each other, they would face whatever came their way, united and unbroken. The dim light of the station's control room flickered as David, Ellis, and Zara surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The air was heavy with the scent of burnt circuitry, and the metallic tang of blood. Despite their victory, a sense of impending doom hung over them. David's voice broke the silence. "We need to evacuate. The corporate forces will regroup and return stronger than before." Zara nodded, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "We've already started preparations. But we need time." David glanced at Ellis, who was leaning against the console, his face pale but resolute. "We'll buy you that time." Zara raised an eyebrow. "How?" David's mind raced, formulating a plan. "There's an old cargo ship in the lower docks. It's slow and outdated, but its hull is reinforced. We can rig it with explosives and use it as a decoy to lure the corporate forces away." Ellis stepped forward, his eyes blazing with determination. "I can help set the charges." David's heart ached with pride and fear. "It's dangerous, Ellis. You've already done so much." Ellis shook his head. "I won't let them take us. I can do this." Zara placed a hand on David's shoulder. "You've raised a brave kid, David. We'll make sure your plan works." Together, they moved swiftly, navigating through the battered corridors to the lower docks. The old cargo ship loomed before them, its massive frame covered in dust and rust. David and Ellis worked side by side, setting the explosives with precision. As they finished, David turned to Ellis, his voice thick with emotion. "Ellis, you need to get back to the command center. I'll handle the rest." Ellis's eyes widened with concern. "But Dad—" "No buts," David interrupted gently. "You've been incredibly brave, but I need you safe. Go with Zara." Reluctantly, Ellis nodded and hugged David tightly. "Be careful." David watched as Zara led Ellis away, his heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. He activated the ship's systems, setting the autopilot to a distant sector. As the engines roared to life, he contacted Zara over the comms. "Zara, the ship is ready. Get everyone to the escape pods and evacuate. I'll meet you on the surface." Zara's voice crackled through the static. "Understood. Good luck, David." David took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He boarded the cargo ship, making his way to the bridge. As he activated the final sequence, a cold determination settled over him. He knew this might be his last mission. The ship lurched forward, exiting the station and heading towards the coordinates David had set. He monitored the sensors, watching as the corporate fleet began to converge on their position. The decoy was working. In the control room of the station, Zara coordinated the evacuation. "Everyone to the escape pods! Move quickly!" Ellis stood by her side, his eyes fixed on the monitors showing the cargo ship's trajectory. "He's going to make it, right?" Zara forced a smile. "He's one of the smartest people I know. He'll find a way." As the last of the escape pods launched, the station shook with the force of the approaching fleet's weapons. Zara and Ellis boarded the final pod, the hatch sealing with a hiss. David watched the corporate ships close in on the cargo vessel. He initiated the detonation sequence, a sense of calm washing over him. His thoughts were of Ellis, his bravery and resilience. "Be brave and remember, I will always love you," he whispered, his voice breaking. The cargo ship exploded in a brilliant flash, the shockwave rattling the corporate fleet and sending debris flying in all directions. In the aftermath, David's sacrifice bought the rebels the time they needed to escape. Ellis clutched the sides of the escape pod as it descended towards the surface of a nearby moon. Tears streamed down his face, but a fierce resolve burned within him. He would honor his father's legacy. As the pod landed, Zara helped Ellis out, her expression one of somber respect. "He saved us all. We'll continue his fight." Ellis nodded, wiping his tears. "We'll make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain." The rebels regrouped on the moon, the story of David's bravery spreading quickly among them. He became a symbol of unyielding love and sacrifice, inspiring others to join their cause. Ellis grew, carrying forward the lessons and love from his human father. Each battle he fought, each victory he secured, was a testament to David's legacy. The memory of David's final words echoed in his mind, a beacon of hope and strength. United by their loss and driven by a shared purpose, the rebels continued their fight against the corporate tyranny. And through it all, Ellis remained steadfast, his father's spirit guiding him every step of the way. The stars shone brightly above, a reminder of the vastness of space and the enduring power of love and sacrifice.